Hello. So, today I'm going to be reading Rainbow Factory by Aurora Dawn. Important thing to note is that this is going to be unedited all the way through. Except I'm going to stop for a drink every so often. But besides that, unedited. And also, this is like grim, dark, and vulgar. It has cursing and there's blood and yada yada yada. If you don't feel you're mature, feel free to click on a different video. All my other videos so far, I'm pretty sure, are good for younger audience, so feel free to check one of those out. And yeah, so let's begin. No pony truly knows how rainbows are made in Equestria, but when Scootaloo and her friends fail their flight tests, they find out the truth to how the glorious Cloudsdale produces its signature export, and at what horrifying cost. Yes, that was the intro. Dun, dun, dun. Now, a rainbow's tale isn't quite as nice as the story we knew of Sugar and Spice. Oh, and I'm not a real good singer, but there's a song for this, so feel free on these parts to pause it, listen to the song, then get back. But yeah, I might even put a link or something. But onward forward. There's long been rumors as to how exactly rainbows are made in Equestria. While a great amount of Pegasi ponies are employed in the rainbow department of the weather factory, almost all of them do the low-end work. What's known is the great streams of spectra, the individual colors of the rainbow, flow through large grates into vast vats. From there, workers carefully and equally mix the spectra into the coagulated rainbow pool. That's difficult to say. Coagulated rainbow pools that dot and run through the factory and surrounding city. Next, that mixture is pumped to the floor below, where other employees atomize it and store it until the active weather Pegasi deploy it in field. However, no one knows how individual spectra is made. Supplies are never seen being brought in, leaving not even a clue what goes into a rainbow. Tourists, when visiting the factory, are treated to an extremely foreboding and plain wall, with massive solid doors barring entry to any pony at any time. While most of the facility's various signs and architecture is bubbly and more welcoming, the Rainbow Factory's upper floor was protected by harsh imagery of potential hazards and death, and the cloud wall was made not out of the clean white of the rest of the city, but of a black, quietly thundering fog. To become an employee of the Upper Rainbow Factory means sacrificing any life outside those black walls. Workers are sworn to secrecy and forbidden from leaving, and live inside the facility itself. Those few who ever managed to make it out, not in a body bag, were twisted and disturbed, too damaged to ever bring themselves to talk about it. A lot of theories were proposed. Dark magic from captured unicorns, chemicals and environmental hazards that no sane pony would tolerate, and even thoughts of another unknown sister of Celestia's, destined to create the spectra instead of raise a sun or moon. None of them could be further from the truth. Or rather, further than the truth. But a rainbow's easy once you get to know it, with the help of the magic of the Pegasus device. Come on, Orion. We're going to be late for our final test, Scootaloo called to a friend of hers. She was older now, in her last year of flight school. She, like all other Pegasus in the school, was terribly nervous of the final test. Those that pass were granted freedom into the world, to find their cutie marks if they haven't yet, and become working ponies. A little known, or at least little thought about fact, was of what happened to the fillies that failed their test. While uncommon, one or two from every class generally didn't have it in them to perform the rigorous acts and maneuvers. Those that failed their tests were looked down upon in the worst of ways, shunned and hated. Cloudsdale had always bred a form of nationalism amongst its occupants. If you weren't the best, or didn't show the potential of being the greatest, you weren't allowed to be part of the glorious collective. Scootaloo moved a little to the side as Orion, a tall yet fairly skinny pony, settled next to her. He fluffed his light brown feathers and gave a worried attempt at a smile as he stared around where he sat. They were sitting in the large open waiting room, overlooking the Colosseum, with all other graduating Pegasi. Just visible in the distance was the factory. Orion glanced at it and gulped. "What's the matter, Orion? You afraid of getting a dead-end job on the snow line?" Orion chuckled a bit, then closed his eyes and sighed. "No, it's just, I don't know. I don't think I can do this. What if I fail? What if I don't fail, but do just bad enough to be disliked by everyone? I don't know if I can take being deported. Where do we even go, anyways?" Scootaloo gave Orion a friendly punch. "No one knows you don't, and we're not going to fail. Everyone here is going to be fine. I know I will at least pass." She laughed. "Thanks to the tips from Rainbow Dash, I'm sure to be fine." "Oh yeah, sure, that reassures me. That actually just as, if not even more reassuring than the psychopathic hate every pony here seems to love to spread." Quit panicking, scaredy wings," Scootaloo replied. "The only one here I think even might fail is that yellow pony with the dark green mane. She's the one who was out sick for that month, you know." "Oh yeah," Orion remembered as he craned his head in the other pony's direction. "The one who had that bad case of hoof and wing. She looks pretty confident, though." "I suppose we'll see," Scootaloo trailed, turning to look at the factory herself. It gave her chills, not of fear, but pride. "I hope I get some cool active weather job. Can you imagine? Everyone in Ponyville or Philadelphia staring up at me going, 'There goes Scootaloo, such an amazing flyer, and from Cloudsdale.' There can be no doubt." She smiled in excitement, forgetting her tensions for the moment. "That would be something, I'll admit. Mind you, just coming from Cloudsdale, who wouldn't be in awe?" "Exactly. Praise the flock. Praise the flock. Places, places, every pony." A massive buff Pegasus walked towards the entrance to the Colosseum. "We're going to do this by name. Your educators are on the east side of the field. Do not, I repeat, do not fly too far west. If they lose sight of you for any reason, you'll be failed immediately. Take deep breaths, stretch your wings one last time. The test will consist of 3 sections: weather clearing, agility, finally recovery. Clear the clouds, fly through the hoops, and then fly to the marked elevations. Close your wings for at least 3 seconds, any less and you'll fail. But keep in mind there's no extra points for extra seconds. Finally, recover before you hit the cloud floor. Understand? Any questions?" The instructor paused and carefully glanced at every pony in the room. Everyone's eyes were completely focused on him, and none were creased with confusion. "All right, Aurora Dawn, you're up first. Clear, fly, fall, complete." The yellow pony nodded and walked quickly up to the starting ramp with purpose. She stared at the watching judges, waited for a nod from all 3, and then took off with powerful force. The ramp bounced slightly from the force of the takeoff, Every pony watched as Aurora quickly reached the starting altitude and then began a direct and purposeful attack on the position clouds. With expert timing and intelligent angles, the sky was soon empty of any moisture. Scootaloo and Orion watched with open mouths as they watched the first testee pull fast, tight turns, expertly shooting dead center through each and every hoop. Finally, Aurora pulled herself up to the proper altitude, hovered, and closed her wings. The group of students gasped as she started plummeting down towards the clouds, and counted breathlessly. 1, 2, 3. They sighed as they watched her wings open in the correct amount of time, collectively holding that relief. Suddenly, Aurora's wing whipped upwards, and the group of students flinched in horror as they all heard the loud hollow snap, only to be suddenly replaced by an unending, piercing scream. Many, like Orion, shielded their eyes with their wings, as often, like Scootaloo, could only watch, terrified as the blur of yellow, green, and red plummeted into the clouds with a dull thump. Wasting no time, the instructor walked forwards again as the three judges simply pointed down and started shuffling papers around. Speaking loudly as if nothing had happened, he called out again, "Daisy Fields, clear, fly, fall, complete." Scootaloo and Orion stared slack-jawed as another pony gulped and then walked forward into the path and took off. They turned up from the collision. Away, they saw the shivering yellow body attempt to move, only to collapse with a cry. "Farday, spots, clear, fly, fall, complete." Aurora still struggled to walk, wailing with every step. Her legs weren't broken. She could use them fine, but it was obvious the pain from her wing joints and the loss of her potential life was crushing her. Scootaloo felt Orion shuffle uneasily, tears welling in his eyes as the frown formed on his face. "Holiday shine, clear, fly, fall, complete." "No one's coming to help her," Orion seethed through closed teeth. "Oh, that was supposed to be seething. Let me try again." "No one's coming to help her," Orion seethed through closed teeth. Scootaloo felt extremely sad for the yellow Pegasus, but couldn't see herself helping her. She would be failed herself and sent away, far away from Cloudsdale and any familiar place on Equestria, to a place where she and any other failed students could never stain Cloudsdale's reputation. It was a terrible chain, but Scootaloo couldn't fail herself. She couldn't fail her friends, and she definitely couldn't fail Rainbow Dash. Not after the care and help she had given her Scootaloo's whole life. Scootaloo blinked the tears from her eyes, and forced herself to watch the competing students, one after another, took off successfully, passed the test, flew to the east gate, under the judges' spot in the stands. That's all Scootaloo focused on. Pass the test, fly to the gate, live a happy life. Orion Solstice, clear, fly, fall, complete. No. What? The instructor took a step back, one leg left raised in the air. "You can't just refuse your flight test. Get out there before you piss the judges off." "No, don't even pretend you care about my future if you don't care about hers," Orion defied, unsure about himself. "You say you want me to get a good life, and yet you let those that fail suffer unbearable pain." "Get the fuck onto that field before I fail you myself," the instructor shouted menacingly. I would shout, but don't want to be like, wake everyone up and break your earphones and stuff. Oh, and I warned you, there is cursing in here. "Fine," Orion spoke sharply. Before walking onto the ramp, he stared at the judges, waited for the individual nods, and the second they came, he took off. However, long before the starting altitude, he turned sharply and landed gently next to Aurora. She turned and looked at him, blood running down her forehead and sides. Tears streamed down her face. What are you doing? You'll fail, like me. You'll be exiled. I'd rather be exiled from a place that treats ponies like this than live my life with others, while others don't live theirs. Aurora smiled, happiness briefly replacing her sadness in her black and puffy eyes, until she stumbled again and intense pain flashed across her body. Aurora leaned in close, using his wing to brace the yellow pony against himself. He stared up at the judges, beaming hate with his vision. They stared down, unaffected, and simply pointed down, before looking back towards the ramp for the next contest. Scootaloo stood shocked, hardly hearing her name called. She moved numbly up the ramp, never taking her eyes off her friends and the ponies he sacrificed himself to help. After a brief moment she shook her head, recovered her thoughts, and looked to the judges. Thoughts passed through her head as she watched them all nod. Oh, Celestia, what do I do? Can't let everyone I know down, but I'll never see Orion again. I hope he knew that risk when he did that. I'm sure he's thinking the same right now. She glanced at Orion. He wasn't looking at her. She took off, heartbroken. Instinct kicked in as the familiar rush of wind cooled her and blew her thoughts away. She stopped at the right altitude and then launched again, sensing and seeing every cloud, formulating a game plan in a matter of a couple dozen seconds. The sky was clear. She did a quick loop in mid-flight, aiming at the first hoop. With a powerful flash of her wings, she propelled forward through the first ring, and then the second, and then the third. Expertly turning and drifting, she curved in towards the second last ring near the bottom of the field. As she descended, she caught sight of Orion and Aurora, almost at the west gate now. Orion turned his head and smiled weakly. Scootaloo's focus shattered. Orion knew what he did. He cared about her, he missed her, and he'd never get to say goodbye. Scootaloo cranked into the bottom part of the ring, falling backward several feet and hitting the ground. With a sudden intense flash of fear, she flipped herself onto her feet and began flapping her wings, levitating off the ground. Maybe that didn't count as a failure, she thought. I can still fly. There was a distraction on the field. She spun around to the judges. 3 hooves pointed down. Scootaloo started crying there, tears welling up and blurring her vision. This wasn't right. This shouldn't have happened. None of it. Orion should have passed his test and cheered her on from the east gate. She shouldn't have looked at him. She should have focused on flying. But there was no room for excuses. Defeated, she slowly hovered towards Orion and settled down next to him. She looked at him through her purple eyes. He looked back, offering a smile. You did a good job. Scootaloo dropped her head and sobbed. She then walked around Orion, lifting a wing of her own, and helped Orion walk to the west gate. Before them stood a long, unlit hall, with only a cheap sign stuck to the wall, notifying test failees to proceed down the hall. They waited only briefly to gather themselves and prepare for where they would be taken, and then all stepped forward together. So that's all for today. I'm going to do some more tomorrow and try and upload to the nearest break in the story. Yeah. Not much else to say. Ooh, I have exams, which means I'll be able to catch up on reading fanfictions. Well, rather, listening on reading fanfictions. But regardless, I'm planning on doing a reading tomorrow and trying to upload. But yeah, that's all, folks.